Jurassic World Evolution is launching for PC and consoles this year, and we just happen to be among the first in the world to play it for ourselves at Universal Studios in California. Ever since the game's announcement, however, there's been one question on our lips. Just what is Jurassic World Evolution? Happily, we're now in a position to provide the answers, so without any further ado, here's what it is and how it works.
Okay, this is as good a place as any to begin. Isla Matanceros. It's relatively stable. Yeah, you can get your feet wet here.
In a nutshell, or a mosquito encased in amber, if you prefer, Jurassic World Evolution is a park simulator in which you build and manage your own version of Jurassic World, which, frankly, should be more than enough to pique your interest. In practice, however, it's a good deal more complicated than that. The Dilophosaurus is in the details, as they say. As you might expect, this game coming from Frontier Developments, the core experience of Jurassic World Evolution shares a lot of DNA with Planet Coaster. And frogs, but we'll get to that. You plan out a park, building attractions, and connecting them to the pathing system in a way that helps attendees get around. You also place concession stands like gift shops and restaurants to make sure their visit is as enjoyable and profitable as possible. The main difference between this and Planet Coaster, of course, is that the attractions are living, breathing dinosaurs. And because of that key difference, where Planet Coaster's buildings are almost all geared around giving the punters something to interact with, the majority of structures in Jurassic World Evolution are geared around creating, maintaining, and most importantly, containing the dinosaurs. It's a necessary shift in building focus when you think about it, because dinosaurs aren't exactly easy to resurrect, and they require an awful lot of maintenance and care. Also, roller coasters aren't really prone to leaving their designated spots and eating the customers. More on that and other things that can go wrong in Jurassic World Evolution later, but for now, here's a rundown of the type of thing you can build while you try and succeed where Hammond failed. First, let's talk about actually getting some dinosaurs in the park.
I've got an interesting opportunity for you to consider. It will allow us to work together to create life. Pure life. If you've been listening to Dr. Malcolm, then you know how important this is to us, and to me.
The first step to recreating Cretaceous creatures is to get some DNA samples, so one of the most important buildings in the park is the Expedition Center. Effectively, a research management facility. You can dispatch choppers to different dig sites across the world in search of dinosaur DNA specimens, with the different species available at each site conveniently listed so you can increase the odds of getting the species you want. Each of these sites is based off a real-world dig site, and each of these is a finite resource, which is to say that sending repeat expeditions to the same location will deplete its stocks and eventually exhaust it as an avenue for DNA retrieval. Once you've harvested the samples, you then need to analyse them, with the type of specimen determining exactly how much the research is worth. While a fossilised skeleton would look great in a museum, for example, its DNA yield is middling at best. You'd be much better off with a mosquito trapped in sap, as any Jurassic Park fan will surely tell you. Either way, you need to keep researching each species until you hit at least 50%, the absolute minimum level of DNA sequencing required to produce a living, breathing dinosaur. At just 50%, however, half of the DNA sequence will be made up of frog DNA, and any dinosaur you recreate won't be as viable as one you produce after a bit more genome sequencing. It won't come out deformed or anything like that, but you can think of this as the default dinosaur. It won't have the same life expectancy it otherwise might have, for example, or it may not be able to defend itself as effectively should it get into a scrap. Doing more DNA research, in other words, unlocks pieces of the dinosaur's genome that behave like upgrades. When incubating a specimen, you can drop a bit more on your dinosaur to make it a bit hardier, which makes them considerably more expensive, but if the alternative is that your Triceratops gets murdered, or just keels over and dies in front of paying customers, these upgrades are well worth considering. While this building is an invaluable structure for harvesting dino DNA, it's in a completely different facility that the rest of the magic happens. To finally bring your creations to life, you'll need to build yourself a Hammond Creation Center. It's here you decide what dinosaur you're going to resurrect next, and whether you're going to give it any of the evolutionary advantages its ancestors had by way of DNA upgrades. After that, it's just a matter of waiting until your dinosaur is ready to emerge as a fully formed adult into the park. Think of it like a multi-million-dollar microwave, if you prefer. Once your dinosaur has been brought to life, of course, it needs somewhere to go. Let's talk about paddocks. Now, each dinosaur you create emerges into a holding paddock where it will wait quite happily until you can transfer it to its proper enclosure. Assuming it is waiting happily, that is. Each dinosaur has different needs, from whether or not it eats meat, to water access, all the way to how many trees there are in the enclosure. They're a picky bunch, in other words, and if a dinosaur is really dissatisfied with its habitat, it'll make a bid for freedom in search of a better one. Managing this enclosure, and indeed every other enclosure, is vitally important if you want to keep outbreaks to a minimum. There are different materials like electric fences you can utilise to help you keep the dinosaurs where they're supposed to be, of course, but truly the best line of defence is a satisfied dinosaur. There to assist in keeping the park's main attractions healthy and happy are the rangers, who, naturally, require a ranger station. Rangers are essential if you want to keep your dinosaurs from getting sick and dying, as they'll be able to treat affected specimens and generally help keep them from making a bid for freedom. If a dinosaur does escape, however, then you're going to require the services of the ACU station. Armed with 2 helicopters, one for tranquilizing wayward dinosaurs and one for transporting them to their enclosures, they're well equipped to deal with any dinosaur outbreak, as long as they happen one at a time, that is, because a mass exodus is going to take quite a long time to clear up. The ACU station isn't just for emergencies, mind you. You'll also be calling on their services to transport newly incubated dinosaurs from the holding paddock to their new homes. As I mentioned before, there are also restaurants, gift shops and monorail stations to consider in order to keep visitors happy and keep them spending money. And although an unhappy customer might not break down a fence and start tearing anybody limb from limb, it's still an important consideration. And again, as we've already mentioned, building appropriate enclosures for your dinosaurs is very important, and there are lots of different building materials you can take into consideration when planning out a paddock. Electric fences are a good idea in the early game, as they're relatively inexpensive and provide a good level of defence, but only for as long as they're actually powered. Because one of the most important structures you'll be building in Jurassic World Evolution is the humble power station. Unlike other park building sims like Planet Coaster, you have to make sure each building is hooked up to a power source and ensure that those power sources are still operational. Because if the power goes down, much like in the original Jurassic Park, you're in trouble. Not only are you more likely to have a containment breach, but you might not be able to power the buildings necessary to bring the situation back under control, meaning things will go Isla Nublar quicker than you can say, "We spared no expense." And that is a very basic outline of the buildings you can expect to encounter in your first hour or so playing Jurassic World Evolution, but it's also worth noting that's not all you can expect. Strange as it may seem for a park building sim, there's actually a story campaign built into Evolution, which sees you following quests for the science, security, and entertainment divisions in order to unlock new buildings and upgrades, and, more importantly, ponder the same ethical questions that have been powering the Jurassic films for 25 years now. Questions like, should we be doing this? Can life truly be contained and commodified, especially when it comes to creatures we understand so little? And what happens when it all goes wrong? If you'd like to find out a bit more about the story in Jurassic World Evolution, I sat down with the lead writer in order to find out a bit more about the themes and characters, and even retconning bits of the original story from Jurassic Park. You can also see the game in action in a Let's Play we recorded with one of the developers, and if you haven't yet seen Aoife sit down to rate video game characters with Jeff Goldblum, then buddy, you haven't lived. All of these videos and loads more are available on the channel right now, so click on one of these if you fancy it, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a thing in the future. Whatever you do next, mind you, thank you very much for watching this video, and have a lovely day.